But the fishing that I do and that you've gotten into, and I mean, it's so interesting to then, like, for me, I'm doing the opposite. I'm just getting into fishing off of the sandy beaches and getting in fishing in the estuaries. So I'm trying to like read water and learn about like rips, and really, like, not that I didn't know what a rip was, but being able to really know like what's going on in the, like, where the fish set up. And it's funny because you're talking about the bass being, sometimes they're within the rip, but most of the time they're in the more calm water.
Yes.
And I was fishing in one location. I've had this happen on either side. There are fish that stage up ahead of the rip as well, which is interesting.
Yes.
And when I first was learning about fishing on sandy beaches, I didn't know that the bass were going to be ahead of the rip. I casted up current, but then I was catching all my fish like right there. And then the next day they're all on the other side of the rip, like down current.
Yes.
It's so funny how the bass will change depending on what they're feeding on, depending on different amounts of current too.
Well, that's the thing, and it's funny you mention that, because there's high I shouldn't say high tide, but incoming and outgoing scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like I said, I fish low tide, probably, I want to say maybe 75% of the time I'm fishing.
Yeah.
In these estuaries, and like there was an outgoing tide where, I'm watching. So like kind of like you said, there's your rip and your deep channel, and then there's this back embankment where I'm literally just watching these fish channel along the back embankment. I'm watching them turn, and they're shining through the water. A lot of the stuff I do is sight fishing, if the water's clear enough. And all these fish were held right there, and I'm like, bounce, 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 bounce.
Yeah.
Hook up. Now the tide started coming in,
and
I'm like, I'm gonna fish that same embankment. Bounce, 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 bounce. I'll hook up every maybe 3 casts. I'm like, okay, why isn't it as electric? Very simple. Throw on some goggles, and I'm swimming in the river, right?
Yep.
And dude, when I kid you not, I'm talking like water trickling over a surface, again, maybe 2-3 inches of water.
Yeah.
And then there's this one pocket where maybe if you step into the pocket, it's up to like your mid calf. There had to have been 80 fish in there. Bro, 80 fish.
Yeah.
Here I am, I'm swimming in my goggles, and I'm like, whoa. I'm like, I have never sprinted out of the water faster to go get my equipment.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it's on a beach, so I'm super close. I go grab my stuff, and dude, again, like I'm throwing it onto this 2-3 inches of water where I can literally, if I wanted to reach in and pull it out, and I'm just dropping it into this, 4-inch difference in water. And all of these fish are at the beginning of the rip, like you said. They're not at the end of it. Those fish that I originally talk about on outgoing, they're on this embankment where the water's pushing up against. And now these guys are at like the lead of the rip.
Yeah.
But it's just because of that 4-inch difference that, again, these sand eels are being pushed into this. Let's say here's your 3-4 inches of sand right here. They're being pushed into this sand dune almost. They can swim through the sand. And guess who's waiting on the other side? Literally a school of bass. Like, these fish are, you want to say they're dumb when, especially when, like in the canal, when they're just blowing up on bait everywhere and you're catching a fish, you could throw a cigarette in the water. But really, when it comes down to scenarios where you have to find these finicky bass or these picky bass, like it's all about presentation. It's all about knowing the bait. And again, just a 3-inch difference in water height or a 4-inch difference in water height was enough for these fish to be like, okay, I'm not expending enough energy or as much energy.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting on this magical wall where sand eels just come busting out the other side. And I'm going to make sure I'm on the other side.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
Super crazy, but absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm.